So what are the key concepts are there? Okay, so the first thing is Azure portal. Like, as you know, a different cloud provider or cloud vendors, they will be having their own portal where you can log in through your credential and you can see all those resources. You can create resources, right? You can have multiple security mechanism. You can create, you can bind it, you can deploy, build, do everything, right? So that's a Azure portal. Maybe I will just show it to you. Okay, so that's Azure portal. The second thing is the resources. What exactly do we mean by the resources? So here resources means like everything in Azure is a resource. Like VM is a resource, Cosmos DB is a resource, VNet is a resource, right? Everything is a resource. We are calling it as a resource. Like, let's say if I want to create a web app, then I will call it as a web app resource. That's a resource. There are different kind of resources, different categories of resources, but these are the resources, right? And there is one concept of resource group. It's like an umbrella, and within that umbrella there can be a multiple resource group. Sorry, there can be a multiple resources. So here how the hierarchy is. So there is a tenant and then subscription. There is one tenant will be unique for an organization, and then subscription. Under that subscription, I may have, under one organization I may have multiple subscription. Okay, for example, if let's say if I'm talking about any service organization, then they will be having, let's say, a healthcare domain. There will be a banking and finance domain. There will be a payment domain. So maybe BFS domain, they might be having their own subscription, and healthcare domain, they will be having their own subscription. Travel and hospitality, they will be having their own subscription, right? But tenant will be one for a company, for organization. And within one subscription there can be a multiple resource group. Okay, resource group. So resource group, generally how we should be creating the resource group. So resource group, like let's say if I'm having a dev, prod, or test, or SIT, or performance, then I can have a 5 resource group, right? For each and every environment I can create resource group. Okay, I can create the resource group, and under one resource group I can be having a multiple resources. So let's say I'm using a database called a SQL DB, then I can have my SQL DB in that resource group. I can have my Java application in that resource group. I can have Docker in that resource group. I can have my own AKS in that resource group. So those things, so these are the resources. Like web app is a resources, AKS is resources, ACR is resources. These resources can be created under one resource group, and one resource group can be associated with one environment. Okay, so then after the resource group, then it's a resource manager template. Okay, so what exactly the resource manager template is? So template is nothing but it's a we call it as a ARM template, like it's a Azure resource management template. So we talked about infrastructure as service, platform as service, and software as service. So similarly, we have like infrastructure as code also. Okay, so infrastructure as code, it means we can have some line of code, and using those line of code we can create the resources. Let's say if I want to create some VM, or if I want to create some load balancer, all those things, what I can do, I can create those resources, okay, by writing some code. So that we call it as a resource manager template, and that's ARM, Azure Resource Manager template. Okay, so that's about infrastructure as code. Okay, and then automation is also very important, and we can achieve automation through the Azure. So there are multiple ways through which we can create the resources. There is Azure portal, and there is a Azure command line interface, which we talk about the CLI. AWS is also having a portal and kind of a command line interface. And then we have a REST APIs also. So let's say if some of the developer, if they are working, or they are working on kind of infrastructure provisioning, they can leverage the API, the infrastructure APIs which is being provided by the Azure. They can consume it and they can do the necessary action. So REST API is there. They have the Azure SDK also. Okay.